everyone, welcome to the other side. Today we're kicking off a brand new series which is called License to Skill. For our uninitiated listeners, this series focuses a lot on skills and actionable skills that you can try to incorporate into your professional life to hopefully enhance your employability. Today's topic of discussion will be around networking, and we'll try to talk about the different things you can do to optimize the networking platforms at your disposal. So today we have with us Swathi. Swathi is a product manager at A4 Advertising with a master's degree from Columbia and a bachelor's from NIT Trichy. Swathi, thank you so much for making the time to be here today.
Of course, my pleasure.
So I've known you since my first year in college, at which point you were in NIT Trichy doing your bachelor's. But right now you already have a master's from Columbia and you're also working in a really established firm in the US with a number of prestigious internships in your kitty. So what role has networking played in your journey so far and what are your takeaways?
For me, networking has been the pillar of how I learned and realized what role really fits my experiences. There's a lot you can do by just speaking to your seniors. I'm sure IIT Madras has fostered the same culture of reaching out to alumni, reaching out to seniors to figure out what fits into your bachelor's program or what masters you want to do. Networking platform is that on steroids, basically, because you have so many more people you can reach out to. You can learn from a lot bigger network, and it gives you a lot more context on what you can do and takes away the boxed environment that you build for yourself when you're doing an undergrad. So for me, that was the primary motivation as to why networking works, and in particular why LinkedIn does make our job of finding a job that much easier.
Right. So, what has your relationship with networking been? How is it different as a professional as compared to how you approached it as a student?
Okay, I'll be honest, being a student and networking is a lot more stress than being a professional networking. When you're a student, your primary motivation is to find a job. And that makes everything go on a faster pace. You're constantly putting pressure on yourself to make sure you're connecting with people, make sure you're continuing conversations. And in some ways, it becomes inorganic. At one point, it stops being, okay, I want to learn about this person's role and becomes, I want this role.
Right.
Therefore, let's talk to these 10 people. That is not there when you're a professional. When you're a professional and you're learning and you're actually on LinkedIn and connecting with others, you're doing so to learn about what they're doing, to see if that could be your next career move, to see if you can make a way for doing that in your particular role. So it's a lot more learning, and it's the stress-free environment that makes a huge difference when you're a professional. Nevertheless, I think it's equally important for both students and professionals to stay connected with their network as well as to learn more about what people with more experience are doing.
Right. So the crux of the whole thing is to just stay connected. But from what I understand, my initial concerns about LinkedIn was that it was almost equivalent to just uploading your resume for public viewing. So what would you say about that?
I would say one of the many things you can do on LinkedIn is upload your resume for public viewing. But for me, LinkedIn has been three things apart from that. Firstly, it's the contextualization of what you want to do. And this means that, again, like I mentioned, it's very, very easy to stay in a box when you're in undergrad or master's, to look at the 10 people around you, the 10 people you admire the most, figure out what they're doing and try to do the same thing. LinkedIn does that on a much bigger scale. So now you have everybody in the world at your fingertips that you can figure out what they've done, what their master's has been, what their undergrad has been. And you also know that every role that you're looking at, every role you think might be a good fit for you, has people from across the spectrum. So you don't need a mechanical degree in order to become that one particular engineer that you want to be. Because you look into it a little further and you'll realize, hey, there's a customer success person who found their way into this particular role. And that, I think, broadens your understanding of what can be done with your master's or your undergrad. The second is realizing what you want. And for me, this was a very big part of why I started using LinkedIn, because when I started my master's program, it's in management science and engineering, which is a fairly broad program. I didn't know what I wanted to be. And there were a lot of different paths that you could take. Similar to your undergrad, when I was doing civil engineering, I had no clue if I wanted to continue into structures, into soil engineering, or if I just wanted to go with the management side. And seeing what other people are doing and finding out whether you're interested in what they're doing is a key step in understanding which role you want to build yourself towards. So you don't have to be accidental about it. You can actually make your choices based on this role looks cool. And these are the 100 people who have landed a role like this from a variety of different backgrounds. Therefore, let's connect and talk to them and figure out if I can build my resume towards this particular role. And the last one is obviously building connections. Unlike in social conversations, LinkedIn is a place where everybody is there to build that connection, to build professional connections. And I think having that motivation come from both sides makes it so much easier to connect with professionals. And it could be somebody with 20 years of experience, it could be somebody with a few months of experience. But the fact that everybody is there, willingly giving their time to connect with others, makes the whole process a lot easier, seamless, and takes away the hesitation of reaching out to people for me. So it is putting up your resume for public viewing, but it's these other things that I think are more important when it comes to LinkedIn.
Right. So coming to your two main points, which is broadening your horizons and making conscious choices, has this mantra remained same throughout your experience networking in the US as well as India? Because if I am to understand, the recruitment process for internships is different in the US as compared to India. So what would you say your approach has been towards networking in these two different contexts?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Most of the networking aspect, I think, will be, at least in my experience, is way more important in the US because most of the jobs you land are through your network. In India, if you're in one of these universities which have placement days, have companies coming in for recruitment, that changes things a bit. But the aspect of actually finding out whether you like the role or not stays the same in both US and India. If you are looking at a particular consulting job and you are going for it and you're extremely interested about that particular role, is it because there's a lot of prestige around that role in your college, or are you doing it because you've seen people in that role and you want to be there? I think LinkedIn gives you a way to figure out if it's the latter, if you're actually interested in the role, versus picking something because it's cool in your undergrad, which I've done a lot of times. I've done a lot of jobs just because, hey, it's the coolest thing you can do on campus. But I think that's why I feel LinkedIn is very important to step out of the box that we grew up in undergrad.
So speaking of staying within the box and trying to conform, coming back to the basics, what do you think is the one cardinal rule of networking on LinkedIn that applies equally to both beginners as well as professional users?
I wouldn't say it's a cardinal rule, but I would say this is a tip. When it comes to making connections, always making sure you contextualize who you are to the person on the other side, which is as simple as leaving a message. And LinkedIn has an algorithm which surfaces requests with messages to the top of your requests. And I don't understand why. It's a very simple thing to do, and improves your chances of being accepted as a friend or as a connection on LinkedIn. So I wonder why more people wouldn't utilize this. And that's one thing I would always encourage, regardless of whether you're a beginner or an experienced user. And the other one is LinkedIn has a lot of professional groups and network pages, which are very, very interesting to join. One, because you get information before anybody else in the network does. And two, it's a great way to start communication and start talking to people in that network. So it could be women in product, or it could be students who are interested in a Microsoft internship. They're completely different types of networks, but just joining those pages is akin to joining Facebook groups, but with a more clear mindset and a clear goal at the end. So these two, I think, would be important for everybody to use and utilize more of.
Yeah. So on the flip side, what's the one thing you shouldn't do on LinkedIn?
This, I think, is a person-to-person thing, but I would say leaving your just make sure LinkedIn is your professional site and not your Facebook or your Instagram or any of the other social networking sites. LinkedIn has an algorithm uh, which is much broader than any of these other social media sites. So your message can be seen by anyone in the world, depending on who else has liked them, which means it's that much more important that you control what you say and you are as professional as you would be in a corporate setting. So I think separating LinkedIn's experience from all your other social media experience is extremely important. And the other thing I would say for just newbies or people who are starting out on LinkedIn is never leave any fields unfilled. You might feel some achievement you have is not that important, or some interest you have is not that important to put on LinkedIn. But I've had experiences where I had a networking, actually had a recruiter reach out to me based on my interest in cryptic crosswords.
Okay.
The networker actually happened to be somebody from Colombia who was also interested in crosswords. So our first conversation was simply about where do you solve cryptic crosswords from? The Hindu, Guardian, HarperCollins, etc. And that came out of my interests part of my LinkedIn page. It's so easy to fill it up. LinkedIn has a cool gamification feature which tells you're on 3 out of 5 stars, and every time you improve a star, it tells you you've increased your visibility by 20%, 30%. So I would say if you're starting out, just make sure you've filled all your fields, you've put up the best profile of yourself up there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if it isn't one cohesive story. Just everything you've done is a story for you, is your story. So I wouldn't leave anything out if I can help it.
So hang on to that thought, because we'll be continuing this conversation on the next segment of our theme on networking. So Swathi will be joining us also to discuss profile building and the nitty-gritties of it. So thank you for joining us for this mini segment, Swathi. We'll see you on the other side. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.